Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, this is actually the second time I'm recording this segment because I've had a little technical problem with the new camera. I actually think I may at least be on the track to knowing why it happened, which is why I feel comfortable doing this video again, because I think I can get around the problem. Let me explain to you what's been going on. On a couple of occasions, you may recall when I did the cooking vlog a couple days ago, I mentioned that there was a lost scene, that something I had recorded that I planned to turn into like a time-lapse segment, but when I got to the editing point, the file wasn't there. There was actually a file name on the card, but when I transferred it over, it had a file length of 0. And so there was literally no file there. It was just an empty file name with no data in it. Well, it happened again yesterday when I shot this vlog for the first time. And when I got back to getting ready to edit it once again I discovered that there was no data in the file. It was just a file name with a file length of 0. And I wasn't sure exactly what was going on. I talked to Jordan a little bit about it, and he said, yeah, it sounds like you got a problem with the camera, maybe you need to replace it and all that. So last night after this happened, I decided to contact tech support at Canon and trying to see if they could figure out what's going on. Well, they got back to me this morning and they had some kind of follow-up questions, kind of some of the basic things that they want to make sure, it's like, whenever you do tech support on something, the first thing they want to do is make sure you're not doing something stupid. So you get a bunch of questions like, is it plugged in? Did you remove the battery before, before the file was written? Did you do anything stupid that might have caused a problem? I understand that, that's what you got to do, because 99% of the time, things like that, that's what it's causing. That's what's causing it. So, I just went through and I answered all the questions. They want to know what kind of an SD card I was using, whether I was formatting the card after every use, stuff like that. And I answered their questions, and those questions started getting me to think about what might be happening. And all of a sudden I started thinking, what I ought to try and do is record like a 15-minute long video. And before I do anything with the computer, let's see if I can play that video back on the camera. And so I did that, and I just basically, I pointed the camera at the TV and recorded 15 minutes of Ferris Bueller's Day Off of Netflix onto the camera, just so I had some motion video. And once I got done with the recording, I was able to play the video back on the camera. But when I plugged the camera into the computer, the file showed up as a file size of 0 again. And when I copied it to the computer, there was nothing there. So clearly there's what the problem is. The file is recording properly on the card, but for some reason I'm unable to transfer it to the computer. So what I did is just did things the old-fashioned way. I just took the SD card out of the camera, plugged it into a little SD port that I have on the computer, and all of a sudden the file was there again. So, aha, there's what's going on. For some reason, I can't transfer a 10-minute or larger file to the computer using the USB cable. I got to remove the SD card and plug it directly into the computer. Now, the first thought you'd have then is, okay, well, there's something wrong with the USB cable. But, that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, because I don't have any problem transferring files that are less than 10 minutes long, and I don't have any problems transferring files that are, like photos or things like that. So there's obviously some little hang up with transferring that big of a file through the USB cable. So at least for now, I think I can work around the issue by just removing the SD card and plugging it directly into the computer. That's why I feel comfortable reshooting this video again and knowing that I won't lose the data this time. So that's what's going on there. I'm still trying to figure out what I can do to simplify, because I'm a little leery about constantly removing and inserting the SD card into the camera and into the computer, because they're delicate little things and I don't really want to damage them. I prefer, if I can, just to plug a cable into the side of the camera and transfer files that way. But obviously that doesn't work for some reason. Maybe I need a better cable, or maybe it's just not an option with the USB cable. There's also another option I think I read something about in the manual, where I can connect the computer and the camera together wirelessly and transfer files that way. So I'm going to maybe look into that also and see what I can do about that. But let's get to what it was I really wanted to talk to you about yesterday, and what it was that I was talking about when I lost the video. As some of you know who watched my live stream last week, my father is back in the hospital again. Now, we aren't really sure entirely what happened, but we think maybe what was going on is that he had a little mix-up with his medication or something, and as a result, he just got really lethargic and really kind of out of it. And it started late last week, where he wouldn't get out of bed, he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't take his medication. And my mom says, you know what, we need to send you back to the hospital. Well, that was the only thing she could do to get him to respond. He got really angry. He doesn't want to go to the hospital. He does not like being in the hospital. So my mom said, okay. And she laid down an ultimatum basically and said, you've got until tomorrow at 3 o'clock or 3:30 or whatever, and I want you to be out of bed, I want you to be eating, and I want you to be taking your medication. And if you don't do that, I'm calling 911, we're sending you back to the hospital. Well, the deadline came and went, and he was not out of bed, so my mom kept her promise. She called 911, the paramedics arrived. She wanted them actually to take him to his regular hospital, the hospital that his family physician has the rights to visit. But the paramedics looked at his blood pressure, and they were really concerned. They didn't really want to take him to a hospital that was 30 minutes away. They wanted to take him to one that was as close to the house as possible. They thought it was that much of an issue. They wanted to get him there quickly. So they took him to another hospital, and he was there for a couple days, and they kind of stabilized him a little bit, and then they discharged him. And at that point, my mom says, okay, we're going to take you over to your regular hospital so that your doctor can come in and look at you, because he's the one that's familiar with your case. So they did that, basically arrived late in the evening, 8 or 9 o'clock, and were basically stuck in the waiting room because they didn't have any rooms available for my father. So my mom and my dad actually ended up spending the night in the waiting room at the hospital until they could get him admitted into a bed. And my friend Beth went along too. Because my mom can't drive, and so my friend Beth, she drove them into the hospital and then kind of waited with them as long as she could. I ended up getting a call from my father that night, and I talked to him for 10 or 15 minutes, and he was just really lethargic and really out of it, and I couldn't really get any straight answers from him. About the only thing I could get from him is that he was really afraid. He really thought he was going to die. And so, a lot of that was about that. Well, after 10 or 15 minutes of this and not really getting anything from him, I asked him if I could talk to Beth a little bit. Because I wanted to talk to my mom first, because maybe I could get a better answer to what's going on here. But my mom was on the phone with my sister, so I said, okay, well, can I talk to Beth? And so he put me on the phone with Beth, and kind of Beth explained what was going on. And I had a better idea at that point. And one of the few things I was able to get from my father was that the waiting room was a little bit cold, and he was cold. And so I talked to Beth and said, I know they don't have a room for him. I know they don't have a bed for him. Can you maybe talk to them, see if they can get him a blanket? And she said, yeah, sure. And after explaining what was going on, we hung up, and I guess she went and got him a blanket. And she remained there with them until about 2 in the morning, when she finally decided she had to go home and get ready, because she had to go to work the next morning. So before she went home, she went to their house, picked up a couple of more blankets for them, so that they could kind of be warm in the waiting room, and then drove back home again and went home and went to bed. And I got a telephone call from her about 4 in the morning here, explaining what was going on, and that was what she told me. And so that was really how that ended. And that was probably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week. I don't remember exactly. And I called my dad the next day and talked to him in the hospital, and at that point already sounding a lot better. He was more coherent, more on top of things, and we had a nice talk for about an hour. And so that seemed well. And then the next day, I was scheduled to bring Jordan home, or bring him back to the airport so that he could fly home. And I told my dad, okay, well, what we're gonna do, I got a 2-hour drive back from the airport, and what I'll do is I'll call you and we'll just talk on my way back to the back on my way back home. And he said, okay, that'd be great. And so when I got back into the car after dropping Jordan off, I got on the phone with him, and right then he announced that they were taking him down to have another paracentesis. He has those done periodically, and so he really couldn't talk at that point. So he said he'd call me back when he got done with the procedure, which usually takes about an hour. And I guess he was tied up with other things, because he never did actually call me back. So yesterday I was just kind of getting ready to call him, and all of a sudden I noticed that he had called me, and apparently I hadn't heard the phone, and I didn't pick it up. And so I tried calling him back, and he didn't answer initially. And so I called him back a couple hours later, and at that point he picked up, and basically what he apologized. He said he'd accidentally butt dialed me, and that was why the call had initially come through. But we still took the opportunity to talk, and we got to talk for about an hour yesterday, a little bit more than an hour yesterday, and he's definitely doing better. He told me that they did bring him down for his paracentesis, and they pulled about 6 liters of liquid out of his stomach this time. And I guess we knew when he had that TIPS procedure, when he was in the hospital for that extended period of time back in November, that this should reduce the amount of liquid that they're pulling out of his stomach with these paracentesis procedures, but it was probably never going to completely end the need for that. Just going to reduce the amount of liquid and reduce the frequency between those. Now, when he was in the hospital before and shortly after he had his TIPS procedure, they were pulling 11, 12, 13 liters of liquid out of his stomach every week. Well, ever since he took that, had that TIPS procedure, the period between when he's had these paracentesis procedures has decreased, and they've been removing less liquid each time. Last time he did one, it was like 11 or 12 days since he'd had his last one, and they pulled like 5.3 liters of liquid out. This time it had been more than 3 weeks since they did it, and they pulled 6 liters of liquid. So he's definitely going in the right direction on that, and we were very happy with that. We're getting to the point now where we're thinking he might only need to do one of those, hopefully getting to the point where he only does one every several months, and that'd be really good. But obviously the TIPS procedure is starting to have an effect, and he's getting better on that. Now, while I was in there, his family doctor actually did pay a visit while I was there, while I was on the phone. So I got to listen to him, and the doctor basically said that, this was yesterday, he said that hopefully they were going to be able to discharge him today, but they wanted to discharge him into a rehab facility for a short period of time. Now, my father objected to that a little bit because I mentioned recently that my parents are getting serious now about moving into a senior assisted living house. In fact, I talked to you about one of the places, showed you a video of the other one. Well, they chose the first place to move into, and they had picked out the floor plan that they wanted, and it was kind of weird because they only had 3 of those floor plans in the entire complex. Well, it turned out about a week or 2 ago, one of those 3 units became available. So my parents immediately jumped on it and said, yeah, we want that one. So they are now scheduled to move into the assisted living place in about the 1st of next month. They're actually saying about the 6th of February is kind of their deadline to move in. So I think they're going to kind of do that. But my father admitted that he has a lot of paperwork and a lot of stuff that he needs to work with my mom on before they can do that. So he kind of explained that, he needs to be home working with my mom because my mom can't drive to a rehab facility with him, and my mom is kind of getting to the point where she thinks she's put enough of a burden on the neighbors having to drive her back and forth all the time. So my father kind of pointed this out to the doctor, and the doctor said, okay, that's fine. You can go home as long as your physical therapist and as long as your nurse is coming by periodically to check up on you, and as long as you're kind of keeping control of your medication and taking all your pills when you're supposed to, and as long as there's no further problems, the doctor agreed to let him to go home. So my father is supposed to go home today. Apparently both of my parents have to have a TB test to make sure that they're okay to move into the assisted living place. So I guess my mom has an appointment to go to the doctor's office to get the test today, and the hospital is going to administer the test to my father today, and hopefully by Friday they will have the answer to that. But like I said, I wanted to kind of share what was going on with my father, because a lot of you are really interested in that, and you're following, you're always giving your thoughts and your prayers, and my father keeps telling me every time we talk about that, he wants me to emphasize how grateful and thankful he is that you keep doing that for him. So I ask that you keep those up. They are working. My father definitely seems to be on the mend. Like I said, the first day after he got admitted to his regular hospital, I talked to him, and it was a world of difference right then. He sounded so much better and was more upbeat and kind of on the path to recovery. So we think that moving into this assisted living place is going to be better for both of them, because they'll be able to the place is more geared towards people in wheelchairs and people with limited mobility. There's people that can help them when they need help, so if my father ends up not being able to get up on his feet, they can, instead of having to call 911, they can call, one of the orderlies from the assisted living place and, get help that way. So we're thinking that this is going to be a really good thing for them. They're kind of making their decisions now, what they're going to keep and what they're going to get rid of. We found out that once they move out, my parents have a reverse mortgage on their house right now. So once they move out, they have up to a year to sell the house. And so that'll give them plenty of time to decide what it is they want to keep, what my sister and I want to keep, and then give us time to do an estate sale for the rest of it, and then sell the house. So this is all kind of going well right now. Like I said, I wanted to share that with you. I think that's all I really have to report on right now. So thank you as always for watching. Thank you for your continued prayers and thoughts for my parents. And I will see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.